Hello, listeners, and welcome to Leading the Way in RVA. My name is Casey Long, and I am the host of this podcast as well as the owner of Fulfilled Coaching and Consulting. The purpose of this podcast is twofold. First and foremost, to introduce you to inspiring leaders here in Richmond. And second, to unpack different leadership topics and leave you with some tactical things that you can do to develop yourself further as a leader. Today, I am over the moon excited to introduce you to our guest, a dear friend of mine. I think we've known each other for well over 14 years. We were introduced by our parents, matter of fact.
Blind date moment.
Blind date. It truly was a blind date put together by our parents when Kate moved down. But Kate Lee, president of Hardywood Park Craft Brewery. Kate, so happy to have you here. This is going to be fun.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I was so excited to get your call.
Yes. So would love to start off just hearing a little bit about your journey, your story, what led you to Richmond, what led you to becoming president of Hardywood.
Sure. So as you said, president of Hardywood Park Craft Brewery. I've been in Richmond. Gosh, I met you very soon after I moved here. So about 14 and a half years, maybe 15 years. Moved here when my son was 1.
Yeah, I was trying to think how old's Porter.
Yeah, he just turned 16, which is insane. I know. Time flies. So I moved here for my job where I was working at Anheuser-Busch, the brewery down in Williamsburg. And I was living in New Hampshire, working at the brewery before that, and got an opportunity to move down here. And absolutely loved it. I commuted back and forth from Richmond to Williamsburg at the brewery, and it was long and it was hard. And then, I had an opportunity to work local and help Hardywood kind of build from the ground up. And I joined them about 11 years ago. So I can go back even further than that and talk about how I even got into the brewing industry.
That's what I'm super curious. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and what led you to being in the beer industry.
Sure. So I'm not really from one place, although all of my family, as you know, does live here in Richmond. But as a child, I moved all around everywhere. But went to college in Raleigh, North Carolina at NC State. Got my Bachelor's of Science degree in food science with a minor in nutrition. Honestly, when I decided that was going to be my major, I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. But I took my very first food science focused class, and it was fermentation science, and learned how to make beer and learned how to make wine, and absolutely fell in love with the whole idea, the whole process. I was romanticized by the science side of it, by the art side of it.
You found your passion.
I did. And so that was my sophomore year in college, and just really decided that was the path I wanted to take in college. So I went in not knowing what I wanted to do, but by my sophomore year, I knew that's exactly what the industry that I wanted to be in. So from that point on, graduated. I got my degree in food science and had a really quick opportunity to do research and development for a salad dressing company. Short and sweet down in Atlanta, but it was a great time because that's where I met my husband now, Matt, as you know. But then got an opportunity with Anheuser-Busch working at their brewery out in Fort Collins, Colorado. So I started there in their quality assurance department, moved around to 4 different domestic locations, including Columbus, Ohio, Merrimack, New Hampshire, and then was assistant brewmaster down at Anheuser-Busch in Williamsburg. And ran into Eric McKay and Patrick Murtaugh, the co-founders of Hardywood Park, at a small business get-together that my father actually brought me to, and met them and just started talking and discovered that I was looking for something different, and they were looking for someone who was looking for someone like me, and just decided that it was a perfect fit. It took about a year for us to really develop our relationship, but ended up joining Hardywood Park as their director of quality assurance about 11 years ago.
11 years ago. I remember, so do you remember you and I were sitting at some sushi restaurant, at the bar at a sushi restaurant, and it was...
We were at Osaka.
Yes, and it was your pivotal... You were burned out from driving to Williamsburg every single day, and this
62 miles one way.
Yeah, this opportunity was brewing. Brewing. Huh?
Brewing.
And that was 11 years ago.
That was 11 years ago. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Time has flown. Hardywood has changed so much in every aspect, but yet it's still stayed the same at the core. And that's just been so fun to be part of building something and being such an integral piece of making a company of who it is today. It's been very fulfilling. It's been hard, but it's been fulfilling.
Yes. And it sounds like the way you say it just sounds like you kind of just quickly fell in love with food science and like knew that was your passion, which I think is uncommon for the average person.
It is. It's also bizarre that it ended up being beer, but my dad was proud.
Yeah. And then at the same time, you kind of, in a natural way, like fell into meeting the owners of Hardywood, and that kind of evolved. Like, what are some of the things? Do you think it was simply just destiny and fate, or would there be some things in there that you think really helped you at an early age get clear on who you were and what you were passionate about?
I mean, my dad certainly has helped me through the journey. Just really, he's a very business-minded individual, and I always knew that about him. So the perfect balance of my mother and my father. My mother being my sounding board for all of the big life moments, and my dad being that sounding board for all of my business journey moments. It was really kind of a perfect collaboration of them helping me through all of this. But you made it sound as if my story kind of went so eloquently, which it did not. I did not get here without a lot of trials and tribulations. I loved working for Anheuser-Busch for so many years. I was there for 12 plus years. But I had some very difficult times, especially towards the end, that truly helped me understand how important it was to be happy at the workplace. And I wasn't at the end of my time with that company. And it was truly based off of the values of the company and how they aligned with what I valued as an individual. And as I had my daughter, Eliza, she was born here. She's now 12. So when I had her, and I was working at Anheuser-Busch at the time, it just became clearly evident that those values were even more important to me, and that I needed those to be happy and to be to have a sustainable life. I mean, truly, mentally and physically. I couldn't not honor those in myself. And so that was, for the most part, the changing dynamic is once I had my daughter, I had to be more present for my children. And that was not something that I could do commuting 62 miles one way, back and forth every day of the week, being on call on the weekends, being on call 24 hours a day, and not having the support that I needed professionally, and not being aligned with really those beliefs and those values. So
it sounds like the theme I'm hearing there is like your family is your Northern Star. Like your parents
they are
pivotal.
my grounding moment. 100%.
Yeah, they were pivotal in like supporting you and being your sounding board and sponsoring you and helping you figure out where you wanted to go. And then your children, especially, and we have this in common, like I found after Halson, my second child was born, like I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm going to work, I'm going to absolutely love what I do.
Yes.
Like if I'm going to straddle this balance of being a mom and working, like I have to love what I do, and it has to be right.
You have to.
Sounds like you had the same moment.
Yeah, you have to love what you do, and you have to be able to be present. I was very lucky that my parents were present. I mean, yes, my dad worked. My dad traveled, but he did a remarkable job at being present and being there for those important, pivotal moments. My mom was a nurse. She would work overnight hours, but she was always there at those pivotal moments. And I'm sure they think back and wish that they could do better, or have done better. But I mean, in my mind, they were incredible. And I just want to be that same thing to my children. And I wasn't there. I had to miss my daughter's first birthday because of work. So when that happened, I just knew it had to change. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it had to change. And then you probably were telling your parents that it had to change.
Absolutely. Yep.
Next thing you know, you're networking.
And my friends. I mean, you made a big difference during that time too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So then you knew something had to change. I think there's probably a lot of listeners out there that find themselves in a position like we were, where it's like, this does not work anymore. So what were the steps that you took to kind of start?
I mean, so I started looking online at different job applications, and truly I loved the industry I was in. I mean, we had talked about that being my passion, but I also knew that that was not a huge industry of 11 or 12 years ago. And 12 years ago is about when I kind of started thinking I wanted to change my path. And so I actually started looking outside the industry, which was really, in some ways, depressing to me. It had become my identity that I worked at a brewery, and that was very hard for me. And so I had to talk that through, with my family and with Matt, and just, who am I without working at a brewery? Which seems so weird, but
So you had to do some soul searching.
I had to do some soul searching. So, applied to jobs, did some interviews. Nothing really excited me, and was getting a little bit down. And that is when my father, and he's going to kill me for not remembering the name of this, but it was some sort of small business startup group that met once a month. And he was like, you know what, let's get your mind off of this. Why don't you come out with me? The actual event this month is happening at Hardywood Park Craft Brewery, and I think that the folks from Carlots were
that was big. Yep.
Were speaking, and then of course Eric and Patrick were speaking, and then Ledberry I think were the other speakers. And he thought it would just be a time for me to get my mind off some things, meet some people locally, and the stars aligned, and that's when I met Eric and Patrick for the first time. And truly that evening, Eric McKay actually made a joke to me, and he was like, so what do we need to do to get you hired? And I kind of looked at him, and he looked at me, and we both did that, and then I was like, and we had that, wait, or is this for real? It did not happen immediately. It took a year. But we kept conversations going for about a year, and I finally made the leap. And it was a risk. It was a huge leap. It was a tiny company at the time, and I was working for a huge corporation where financially I was very stable. And making that leap to support my family, not knowing what was going to come next, it was a big jump. It was scary, but I knew I had to make a jump like that in order to make the difference that I needed.
And you did it.
I did it.
Look
Here
at
I
you
am.
now, president of Hardywood.
Haven't sunk yet.
So tell us a little bit about like I heard a theme to a family, I heard a theme of presence. And so tell us about the present moment of like being president of Hardywood. What does that entail? What do you love about it? Like what would be interesting for our listeners to know?
Sure. Well, as I said, I started with Hardywood as their director of quality assurance. So I didn't start as president.
Is that like just tasting beer all day?
That is part of it, yes. That is a big part of it. That's a huge part of it, because at the end of the day, if the beer doesn't taste good, then by all means, you're not doing something right. So it also involves working in the lab, doing a lot of analytical testing, ensuring that process flow is efficient, ensuring that you're eliminating bacterial growth that could potentially throw off flavors into the beer. It is quite a bit more than
science. A lot of science.
So it started up their lab, their entire quality assurance program, and really just took all the things that I had learned from the great folks at Anheuser-Busch and just started pulling little bits of those, even things that I wasn't heavily involved in, like the safety program. I had to live that every day, and I knew how important that was because Anheuser-Busch did such a great job at instilling that I started saying, wait, we need a safety program at Hardywood, and wait, we need this operational efficiency piece to improve our X, Y, and Z at Hardywood, and just started pulling all of these small tidbits that I had learned, and eventually moved into the operational side of things as their director of operations, then moved my way up to VP of operations. And then once that happened, had the discussion with Eric and Patrick about going to get my MBA so I could develop some more business-minded skills to be more value to them. So I really kind of got where I was by finding all these different opportunities and really just taking them and trying to figure out how to solve those problems. It was so motivating to me to be able to make those decisions and just take something, grab it, and make a difference.
Yes, because being at somewhere like Anheuser,
not easy
took
to
like
do.
8 years to get one
steps.
change.
Yes.
So you were able to take everything you learned from that and bring it to Hardywood. So it was like this beautiful meshing of your passion
Yes.
and your experience. And I love it.
Yeah,
And then,
it was great. Very motivating. So.
wow. And then you brought in the business side of it
Yep.
too.
And so got my MBA at VCU. Started the fall before the pandemic hit, which was really great timing. But VCU Executive MBA did an incredible job at pivoting, and I learned so much from that program. And I went into the program knowing that ultimately president was that dream role.
So you had vision
And
for where you wanted to
vision,
go.
and Eric and Pat, were hoping that I could accomplish the knowledge and get the motivation and the drive to really accomplish that as well. And I did. And it was about a year after I graduated that we made the jump, and I became president at Hardywood.
I think that's like one of the things I love so much about you. But one of the things, like, you were small, but you were mighty, and you were
small.
courageous, and you just continue to amaze me. I love just hearing the story that I haven't heard in depth. Like, I know bits and pieces of it, but it's like you knew your passion and you have drive, and it's like it all just came together. And
It did.
It's beautiful. And Hardywood is just such a well-respected business here in the Richmond area.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get there soon. So what's the leadership topic that you brought for us to chew on today?
So it has a lot to do with my reason for making this big jump. And I had mentioned earlier about core values and core values being so important to me. And the reason I wasn't happy at my previous job was because those core values simply did not align. And whether they aligned on paper, that's one thing, but how I felt when I went to work every day, there wasn't a mesh between those two things. And so it was like we weren't living those values at work every day, and I didn't feel like everything we were doing was embracing those values. So
There was a disconnect.
There was a disconnect. And so my leadership topic today is value-based leadership.
Yes.
Which I know you love because
like
I know
the
you have a
foundation of
connection to this theory as well. But this is something that I took from my MBA at VCU, Thomas Epperson.
Yes, Tom Epperson.
With Inner Will Institute, which is an offshoot of Luck Stone.
Yes.
So he was our leadership professor, and he was absolutely
the best.
incredible. Such a really just personable, wonderful leader, teacher, instructor, person, individual, and was really impacted by the class, really loved it. And it's all about finding your values as an individual as well as a company, right? And ensuring that they align in the sense that every decision that you make as a company should really push back to one of those values that you've established. And if it doesn't align with one of those values, you shouldn't move forward with that decision.
Yes. Your values are your compass.
And it just truly, it was like a duh. That makes so much sense. And, I think at that time, going into the pandemic and especially coming out of the pandemic, it was a really rough time for a lot of industries, especially the brewing industry specifically, if we're just hyper-focusing on that. I mean, inflation was hard. Everything had changed. People's minds had changed, and everything just felt very discombobulated. And here I was stepping into this new role of president, and I was finding that our folks at Hardywood were not happy. They were coming to work. They were feeling burnt out. They were feeling frustrated. And it was really hard for me to understand because I knew I had these values, and I knew what kind of person I was, and I knew what kind of person Eric McKay was, and what kind of person Patrick Murtaugh were, and Brian Nelson, our brewmaster, the leaders of this company. I knew what we valued, but I saw that there was kind of a disconnect starting to happen. And it just became more evident to me that we needed to do something about it. And that's when I decided to very intentionally pull the knowledge that I learned in my MBA into what we did. And so we actually worked with Inner Will as a company with Hardywood. We all went and we met, and they did such a great job at kind of taking us through the motions of establishing our mission, and not that we didn't have one, but we didn't do a really great intentional job at it like Inner Will had helped us with. And so we did a really great job at intentionally establishing our mission, intentionally establishing our core values, the whys behind them, what the behaviors were for people in our company to support those core values. And so that was step one, but step 2 and 3 were educating our employees on what those things are, educating the public on what those things are, so that people can truly start living them on a day-to-day basis. And it has become, our idea is that we wanted every employee at Hardywood to be able to list what our core values are and understand what value-based leadership was. And while we still have steps to take, it did not happen nearly as quickly as I had liked. We're getting somewhere, and it feels good. The culture has started to shift. We're starting to see higher engagement. At the end of the day, your company is your people. And you can have all the drive and motivation and hardworking ethic that you want, but if you don't have the people there to support you, you can't accomplish anything. So we knew this intentional focus on our people had to happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love your passion behind it. And I love
just,
you took what you learned in your program and realized in the heart of chaos, in the heart of COVID, in the heart of people not knowing which way was up, you were like, all right, we're going to do this. And it's like you set your anchor. So what are the values?
Sure. So the values are safety, quality and innovation, sustainability, and community. So it seems very easy and very obvious, but we just really wanted to make sure that, I said community, I'm sorry, I meant integrity. I'm like, I can't believe I just went and screwed that one up.
But I do think there's community is a subset one, because that's why I said, I can't wait to get over there, because it is especially as the weather warms up, the location on West Creek is just
it's perfect for that.
Perfect.
Yeah,
the kids run off into the fields and the parents sit around and drink their delicious beer.
So it's like do integrity, do the right thing when nobody's looking. Don't be stupid, right? Don't be mean, don't be a bully. It's just it's all the right stuff. So that was kind of one piece of it, but the other piece of it was really educating our senior managers, including myself, on what our strengths are and what our values are and how we respond to people on a day-to-day basis. And so Inner Will also did a really great job at assessing ourselves through feedback from other people.
Oh, yes, a good 360 feedback. Yes.
So I've done a 360 before, but I've never approached it in the way that Inner Will helped us approach it. And so I had done the initial test in my MBA. And so I had all of our senior managers do the same thing and go through it. And so we got a report where we got assigned our color.
Yes.
So I am a yellow.
Me too. Yes.
Okay. So
this is style, friends. We've talked about the 3 foundations of leadership strategy is having mission, vision, values. That is your strategy, but then also knowing your style and your strengths.
Yes.
So I did not tee her up for this.
But one of the things that I already knew about myself, but was for the most part re-emphasized, was that I am empathetic, and I am definitely a person who makes decisions with empathy in mind. And so while I think that there can be some downfalls to that, I figured, how can I best lean into that side of things? And that is, I think, maybe why I have so much passion for this, because it is a way to help our team, our community, our employees be lifted up and lift themselves up through feeling more engaged and more involved. And something that motivated me at Hardywood was to feel like I made a difference. And I think that's the same thing that I'd like to offer to the people who work there, is just being able to come to work and not just do a job. I'm sure we have people who do feel that way often sometimes, but we've really tried to make an intention in making sure that each of our employees feel like they can make a difference.
I love this. I love hearing your story from taking this course when you went to business school, right?
And you're thinking, which is a huge jump on its own for me. Yes. Being a science-based minded person, I was so scared of accounting and finance, which I'm still scared of. But
yeah, I hear you.
That's why we have people that do that.
But I think it's interesting. You go to business school all with this vision of being president. And when I think business school, you think business school, we're thinking like accounting and all these things. And then the amazing Tom Everson comes in and talks about in business school, values-based leadership.
And I had my moment.
Kudos to VCU for knowing to include that. And then it was the tool you were able to pull out in the heart of ambiguity. And it sounds like Hardywood, who already has such a great just reputation and foundation here, is now just like even more so headed in the right direction with the engagement development.
Yeah, again, I think if you create an environment like Hardywood has and you establish the foundations that Eric and Patrick did, and you have the passion that our brewmaster Brian Nelson has, you've already accomplished so much to be able to pull in such great talent. And so we have been, I'd like to say lucky, but I think it's intentional in that we have such great people working for us. They're just all so smart. It's an extremely diverse group. That's another important thing, is just that diversity, so that you have just different outlooks on different situations and different outcomes and how things can look, and listening to all of those different versions of how people are thinking through things. It's all extremely relevant. And, although you may not agree, it kind of helps shapes how you should move forward.
Yes. I think if I had to ground this, Kate, in a couple words, it's like passion meets intention. And passion meets intention, and look what's possible. So
there's still more to happen.
So much more to happen. So we always close out our session talking about folks that inspire you. So thinking about leaders that here in the community that inspire you, and what is it about them that inspires you, all in the hopes that they might be future guests. So curious who your inspirational leaders might be.
I have been inspired by quite a few people, but I'm going to list two people today that have been very helpful for me in the last several years, especially as a sounding board for the business side of things, but also through the mom side of things. Being a senior level working mom is very difficult. Being a working mom in general is difficult. Being a mom in general is difficult. Yes. But it's been great to have these two people kind of align with me and be able to discuss these things. So one of them is, I know you know this person, Christina McClung.
Oh, yes. Very well.
She's a senior VP over at Capital One, and she is an amazing human being and such a great quality friend. She's one of those people that you may not talk to for a really long time, but the second you reconnect with her, you start right back where you were. Mm-hmm. She's always willing to be there. She's always willing to help. And she has had such a successful career.
Yes.
Completely inspired and in awe of her every day because her family is wonderful. Yes. The other individual I actually met about the same time I met you, I guess a little bit after, in the same way. And I met her at a workout class, but it's Carrie Southall. She is the COO of Riverfront Insurance, and she's also an absolutely amazing human being, mother of 2 children, and just a really great sounding board. She's been kind of a go-to person for me to talk through some of the problems that I've had, some of the questions I've had, and just seeing her success in such a large industry, excuse me, in such a male-dominated industry like myself. Yes. That has been really neat to see her just thrive and just be a boss lady. It's been a boss lady. I'm like, I don't know what I'm allowed to say on here. So.
I thought about that earlier too.
It's very inspiring, and again, it's just those two individuals are just a few, but I'd love to see them on here and hear what they had to say.
I love that. Sounds like two boss ladies are in our near future. So, boss lady introducing us to boss ladies. Yeah. Thank you, Kate.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, listener, if you enjoyed today's session, take a moment and like, subscribe, or comment below. Especially leave a comment of a leader that inspires you here in Richmond that might be a great future guest. Also, if you're finding this session compelling and eager to learn more about yourself and your own leadership, don't hesitate to click into my website listed in the description and schedule a complimentary call. I'd love to learn more about you. Thank you.